Hey, it's Sim Kawakami with my co-host Matt Barrows for an emergency reintroduction of the episode that we just finished recording like 30 minutes ago. But we've got to do the Skyy Moore crisis emergency trade update. We were just talking about what the 49ers could do at receiver. They had to add a receiver. I don't know that Skyy Moore is the one and only answer to this, or even a 50% of an answer, but it is an answer. We did not mention Skyy Moore's name on the podcast. But Barrows, at least you save yourself because you did mention him in your 31 names that they could trade for. It is with the Kansas City Chiefs, so I don't think the 49ers love trading with it. I don't think the Chiefs love trading with them, but basically flipped a 6 for a 7th. They got Skyy Moore. It is not much of an investment. I can't imagine they're expecting him to step in for Deebo Samuel or whoever else you might think he would be. Clearly a slot receiver and a returner, although he hasn't returned very much in the NFL. Did not have a catch last season because he was hurt. So there they go, 49ers go. They're so banged up at wide receiver. They're so hurt. God knows anybody they get is going to be of full great health. No, he did not play with like a core muscle injury last year, or he played. He just did not have a catch and was out for most of the season. I guess he got injured in the 49er game last year. 49ers lost. Barrows, your thoughts? Skyy Moore.
Skyy Moore, yeah. I mean, he was on my list of 31 receivers because it looked like he was going to get cut next week. So if that was the case, he would have had to go through waivers. The 49ers aren't guaranteed to get him off the waiver wire. So they basically swapped their 2027 6th-round pick for the Chiefs' 2027 7th-round pick plus Skyy Moore. So not a huge trade compensation there. I agree with you. I'm not exactly sure what he's going to bring. You and I are going to be talking later in this podcast about the type of receiver the 49ers need, and that's somebody who can help them right away, help them in weeks 1 through 3. I'm not sure Skyy Moore is that guy. Maybe he'd be good for a couple of end arounds and razzle-dazzle things, quick hitters, but certainly is going to need time to, get in the Kyle Shanahan offense, adhere to the demands of Kyle Shanahan himself. I don't think that Shanahan's eager to let someone who didn't go through training camp with them kind of loose in the offense. So my point is that I'm not sure that they're finished adding to the wide receiver room here. I think there'll be more scouring of the available receivers next week. Maybe even another trade, not out of the realm of possibilities. But I think Skyy Moore is a nice addition. Young guy, hasn't even turned 25 yet, but not the answer at this point. More for the future than for the now.
Yeah, I think this might be a direct reflection of their views of Junior Bergen, because I think you will hear on this podcast me saying, and I think Junior Bergen has now made the team, because with Jacob Cowing out, who else is going to return? And the returners has to be a receiver, because you just need bodies in that thing. You can't have the returner not be a receiver. Then you just don't even have that person in the receiver room at all. Well, I think Skyy Moore is going to be the returner, or at least one of them, and can actually play receiver. I don't think Junior Bergen can play receiver. I was going to have him there in name only, and if in emergency basis could be your slot receiver, emergency basis. I think Skyy Moore is ahead of that, has actually done this in the NFL for the Chiefs. Might be a fast learning curve. Yeah, it will be tough for him, but at least they can look at him as being a receiver in week 7, week 8. I don't Junior Bergen would be that person. So even when you listen to me saying this later in this podcast, that I didn't say it at the time, but even then I was thinking he's not going to help him much a receiver. But who's going to return? Well, I think the 49ers, you can understand, I keep talking about roster math. They cannot just have somebody just be a returner. Like that is a luxury. They don't like that anyway, and that's probably a luxury that they definitely can't afford. They could have Dallas Flowers return some. They could have Garendo, I guess, could return some. I don't think you want to expose him now that he's your RB2 to returning, but he can still do it. But I think Skyy Moore fits right into that, and they don't have to save a roster spot for Junior Bergen just to be the returner. I think that is probably a reflection. It's worth flipping a 6 for a 7th in 2027 to do it. But this is not the receiver that makes you go, wow, now they're all set for weeks 1 through 3 when Demarcus Robinson is suspended and they're still waiting for Brandon Ayuk. They still have moves to make there. Maybe Jauan Jennings, we talked at length about him later, so I won't go into that. But that's my sense of that. I just don't think Skyy Moore is going to be in there getting third down catches in Seattle. I really don't think that, but we'll see. We'll see. And just a sense of that they would do this shows that they know they just need bodies. They just need bodies who can play the position. But I will add, it would not be a shock if Skyy Moore is hurt, right? It just shows up, practices 6 times, and gets hurt. This is what happens with guys who've been hurt in the past. I'll just say it now. People hate when I say it, but I think now they're beginning to nod their heads a little bit too, that injuries are a real deal, and they're a real deal for this team. And I've said that they've been over-optimistic about signing guys with injuries histories. Skyy Moore did not have a catch last season, mostly because he was hurt. There you go. I'll just say it.
So basically, you're saying that guys who don't have catches in a full season might not be the guy for your team, and also that Skyy Moore's addition is probably bad news for Junior Bergen, and I would agree with that. I think Bergen probably still makes the practice squad. They still keep him around. But you're right. It's been Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing and Bergen doing punt returns for the 49ers in training camp. And 2 of those guys are probably out for multiple weeks with Cowing re-aggravating his hamstring strain. So the Tim and Matt who recorded a half hour ago have tons of details on all of that. But we just had to cap it with Tim and Matt from the future. For the purpose of this podcast.
The Skyy Moore emergency podcast. You knew it had to be there. God, now this sets a bad precedent. So anybody they trade for now, Barrows, we're going to have to do a podcast for. Because if we're going to do it for Skyy Moore, I guess we're doing for Skyy Moore because we talked about receivers so much. But I am a little bit of afraid of the precedent that we're setting here because this is a pretty low bar.
We'll call it the Skyy Moore line. Like you have to be above the Skyy Moore line in order to warrant your own podcast.
Yeah. So basically, it means if they cut Junior Bergen and trade for him back, we will not do an emergency podcast for him. But I'm not sure who else we're ruling out on this one. Anything else you got on this trade, Barrows?
No, I mean, I agree with you. This is about bodies more than anything else. But like I said, the 49ers need bodies who can contribute offensively pretty much right away. And I don't think that Skyy Moore is that guy.
Yeah, let's just say that right now, Jauan Jennings is not playing in week 1. Ricky Pearsall, Russell Gage, and I'm forgetting. And Robbie Chosen are essentially your 3 wideouts. And who's to say one of them won't get hurt in the next few weeks? So Skyy Moore acquisition does not change that. He might get some snaps in there. I could see them trying to figure out some exotic stuff for him, but they don't tend to like to do that within somebody new. You don't know if he's going to figure everything out at speed. So it might not be right away, but it's not changing the tenor of our next 40 minutes of discussion, Barrows. let's just pretend that's true. I hope that's true. And it is. We get into Jauan Jennings stuff. We're not rehashing. It's Jauan Jennings stuff. It's a lot of more big picture look at the wide receiver room and who else they might acquire. So everybody, that's the topper for now. Get to the real meat of the podcast coming up in just a little bit. Hey, it's Tim Kawakami here, 49ers Plus Minus with my co-host, Matt Barrows of the place that's called The Athletic, I'm required to say. Newsy. Camp of the 49ers continues to be every day. We just had scheduled to do this. Who knew what we're going to talk about? This is Wednesday afternoon after a 49ers practice and news breaks that Kyle Shanahan tells Cambiar. I didn't know still things happen on terrestrial radio, Barrows, but that's what it's good for. Cambiar with Kyle Shanahan, the weekly show, reveals that Demarcus Robinson has been suspended for 3 games. 49ers can appeal, but it is likely to be 3 games. This is me saying it, not Kyle Shanahan, if he's going to go ahead and say that. Not unexpected. There had been some timing issues, like when are they going to know? When are they going to hear this? But news finally comes down on the same day that Jacob Cowing leaves practice after just returning recently, as you reported, with another hamstring injury. I wrote it. I'm going to say the line. You might not have read it. They are the reverse Hydra. They get one player back, they lose two. It's just like not going backwards. They're always going backwards with this stuff. Just your reaction to the news about Demarcus Robinson.
Well, the irony is that Demarcus Robinson is the one 49ers receiver who's been a constant throughout the spring and summer. I mean, he's been in every practice, usually has at least a couple of catches per practice. He's been really solid for this team, and yet he's not going to be there probably. Apparently, it's on appeal, and I don't know when that appeal will be settled, but apparently he's going to miss the first 3 games of the season. And the 49ers have been preparing for this. It's not taking them by surprise. But, I mean, it just kind of underscores where this thing is, because Jacob Cowing apparently re-aggravated the same hamstring injury that he suffered on day 1 of training camp. So that was July 23, and he missed 3 weeks coming back from that one. And here we are, 18 days before the week 1 opener in Seattle. So very unlikely that we see him, I would say, in week 1. And now you've got him, you've got Demarcus Robinson, you've got Brandon Ayuk, and you've got Jordan Watkins, who aren't going to be there. So now all of a sudden we've gone from, okay, maybe Jordan Watkins will be the number 3 guy, to, okay, maybe Robbie Chosen, or maybe Russell Gage will be the number 3 guy. And it's not the end of the world, but it just underscores how precarious that is. Oh, the other thing that happened in practice today, I'll set the table for this. I decided that I was going to do a story where I follow Ricky Pearsall around all day. So I bring out the binocs. I'm there for when he comes out of the building, and I'm there when he goes through warm-ups and stretches. We'll tell the folks out there that the 49ers do stretch before practices. So I'm following him like very closely. And one of the plays that I'm following, he catches a touchdown pass from Brock Purdy, but then lands awkwardly and is on the ground for a little while and gets up, and he's holding his right shoulder. Remember, shoulder was a bit of an issue for him coming out of college and last summer. And he's at the sideline with trainers, and they're looking at the shoulder. He's grimacing. He's like trying to work it out. It does not turn out to be anything big at that point. He comes back into practice and, in fact, catches a touchdown pass pretty soon after he gets back on the field. But it just shows you that that's all it takes to really, really cause havoc. And I know you want to talk about other sort of dominoes that this can create.
Well,
but boy, I haven't seen the 49ers this light at one position heading into the season in a quarter of a century.
And let's bring up another name, Jauan Jennings.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, calf injury. Obviously, there are contractual issues, whether that's what's causing him not to practice or not. I think it's probably some effect of it. Obviously, he's got a calf injury. As Shanahan said, it's real. But as Shanahan said yesterday, he's got to practice. Like, you got to practice in order to play, or you're going to just get hurt if you just jump into the regular season. I think they really want to see him practice. If you're Jauan Jennings, this is it. This is your hammer, right? This is finally it. No Brandon Ayuk, no Demarcus Robinson. The only, Jacob Cowing, Jordan Watkins, you name the list. Right now, if Jauan Jennings is not playing in week 1, your starters are Ricky Pearsall and either Russell Gage or Robbie Chosen. And this is not a winning situation. I don't think the 49ers, the same thing. The 49ers have operated as if Jauan Jennings has no leverage in this, 0. They are not going to do anything they don't want to do. This is it right now. I was going to say possibly he would have more if they get to week 1 and he doesn't play, he sits and they lose and they can't move the ball. But Barrows, I'm going to say right now, maybe I'll get aggregated. If it gets to that point and they think he can play, he will no longer be a 49er. If they think he is, sitting out due to a contract in week 1 when they're desperate for a receiver, they will not have Jauan Jennings on the team anymore. They will trade him or they'll cut him. That's my opinion. I don't know that. No one's told me that. But I was just thinking of when would he have his maximum leverage? It's now. And I thought, okay, what if they get to week 1? Remember, Emmitt Smith couldn't get a deal with the Cowboys way back when. They lose 2 games and they give him the deal finally. That will not happen with Jauan Jennings, in my opinion. They are not going to say, oh, you know what? You really showed us. they will trade him or they will cut him, in my opinion, if it gets that far. So it's right now. And I don't know. I mean, maybe the calf injury is still a problem. I think there's less and less belief that it is actually could keep him out for the regular season or whatever. They need him. If he's not back on the practice field, let's say, I mean, I don't even know when it would be because they only have one more practice this week. Then they have the exhibition game, and then it's the cut down days basically right on top of them. This is beginning to get, this is serious. This is very serious with their thoughts and their dealings with Jauan Jennings. I don't know how this gets communicated, but Barrows, if he's not practicing by next week, I think he might be an ex-49er pretty soon after that.
Wow, that's some statement.
Yeah, I think he's likely to be practicing next week, but I don't think they're in the mood to deal with this right now. Now, they might have to. If Kyle Shanahan says we will lose to Seattle if we don't have Jauan Jennings, then they have to pay him. Like, they have to make that decision. I'm not saying it's all on Jennings. I'm saying it's on them too. And if he's absolutely will not play unless they give him more money, they have to figure out how much they can give him realistically. I'm just saying this is really when it comes to, this is it. This is the way he's been played out, and this is it right now.
Well, Shanahan is on the record saying that the MRIs that have been taken of Jennings' calf are similar to what they were a year ago when he was dealing with something similar. And that he, wasn't practicing at the end of August last year and was fine for the beginning of the season. We all remember his colossal game against the Rams early on. I think that was week 3, maybe in Los Angeles.
Yep.
I tell you, I mean, I see Jauan Jennings come out every day. He's not doing much. I would describe it as a light workout. Now, I don't know whether that's the only workout he's doing, the only rehab he's doing. I'm sure he's doing all sorts of, heat and, therapy and things like that elsewhere. But the movements he's doing on the field while the team is practicing is like what you and I would do. It's just like a ladder drill, some light jogging, some high knees. It's like my Fit at 50 exercise routine that I do in front of the television every day. And it's obviously it's working for me, but I don't know if it's quite
Shanahan would cut your ass. Or if he's so hurt, then they might have to put him on injured reserve. Like, they need healthy bodies. Let's get to it. The one way they have a solve for this is to trade for somebody. You would want to trade for somebody who can play right away, right? That the main emergency is to take the Demarcus Robinson slot. If that's next to Ricky Pearsall or if it's next to Jauan, however you count Jennings in there, they do need another receiver, especially if Jennings is a question mark. You just did a story listing 31 names. Familiar name at number 1. I smiled when I saw it because I think it's by far the one that Kyle Shanahan would want.
Yeah.
Obviously very familiar with the system. Shanahan loves the guy, receiver that he's always liked. And would obviously fit in the locker room. It's Kendrick Bourne, who was with the Patriots, who did not have a bad year last year. Like, that's been a shaky kind of stint for him, but I think last year he was pretty good, and I think they liked him there. Now they might be transitioning to a whole other thing. Do you think that's something that the Patriots would be interested, like, give up a 6th for something like that? And what would you give up when you're talking about this? What's the highest pick you would give up to get a receiver like this right now?
Well, it's supply and demand, and the demand is high right now. What the 49ers have to weigh is that, okay, what's the receiver situation going to be like in week 5, week 6? When Ayuk ostensibly could be back, Robinson could be back, Cowing could be back, Watkins could be back. All of a sudden, you've got too many wide receivers. My take on that is that if you think everyone's going to be healthy for the whole season, once they come back from being injured, you're probably wrong on that. So
I was going to say that don't make that assumption.
You can't have too many wide receivers. And then the fit for Bourne is really good because at the beginning of the season, you would have Jauan Jennings, assuming he's healthy, playing the X. He'd be the main guy, just like he was in the second half of last year. You'd have Ricky Pearsall playing the Z, the other wide receiver spot, and you'd have Kendrick Bourne playing out of the slot, which he did a lot with the 49ers early on. He's not a burner, but he's a bigger bodied guy, and he's makes sharp cuts, and he gets open. He's sudden, and I think that's why Kyle Shanahan liked him so much. So it would be a good fit. You could see that being a nice triumvirate to begin the season, and then you see what happens after that. So I would say 6th round is where you start the conversation, and maybe you go as high as the 5th. I compiled this list that you're referring to. It's on The Athletic by consulting with beat reporters for all the teams, 31 teams, and the Patriots beat reporter thinks that Bourne is going to get cut just because it's a youth movement. They've got Jalen Polk, they've got lots of younger guys. This is a rebuilding squad, et cetera, et cetera. So Bourne being 29. Or actually he's 30, might be the odd man out. Would not be a surprise if he's just cut outright. Obviously, the Patriots would love to do a deal and get something for him. So that's probably the number one candidate out there.
Okay, you got any other names you want to toss out there that were in the story or anything? What do you want to move
Well,
up
yeah, I mean, to your point, this is somebody that's going to be used weeks 1 through 3 probably. So it needs to be someone who's good right off the bat, not a developmental guy. You could bring in a developmental guy and put him on your practice squad, and you might use him in the future, but you would want somebody who's familiar with the offense, and there are a number of players that fit that. I'd say Marquez Valdez-Scantling, MVS, who's in Seattle right now and played for Clint Kubiak, last year in New Orleans, so is familiar with the offense. He could be the odd man out up there in Seattle. Here's one for you. Dante Pettis.
Oh yeah.
In New Orleans. He looks like the 6th guy in New Orleans, 6th or 7th guy. He could be waived on Tuesday. Here's the thing with Shanahan. Shanahan loves the way he runs. He loves his movement skills, puts pressure on defensive backs, does not love his toughness or lack thereof. So that would be obviously problematic. But again, you're looking for somebody in weeks 1 through 3, perhaps not somebody to be the guy the whole season. So that might work out. And then Robert Woods would know this offense really well. He's absolutely on the wrong side of 30 and hasn't been prolific in a while, but he could hit the ground running. Ronnie Bell would be another one.
Another one
in Detroit. These guys are all getting cut, so they're not the top guys in the league. But there are some guys that the 49ers could pick up and who could be useful to them in week 1 because they're familiar with this system.
Well, you couldn't list Danny Gray? That you couldn't come up with that name?
I don't even know where Danny is, if he's on a squad or not.
He might not be in the NFL currently. God, you know what? Who would be perfect for them right now? Trent Sherfield. I don't think he's going to be available, but that would be the perfect kind of guy. That would be a Shanahan guy, tough guy, can get open doing certain things.
Special teams.
Special teams. They know what he's going to do. I don't imagine. Well, he's to Denver, right? Yeah, because he was in the joint practice. I don't think they're giving him up. If that guy hits the waiver wire, I think the 49ers would be all over that. 6th round pick, maybe a 5th, and you get a 6th back, something like that. A 5th is pretty high to be doing this, but I also think there is some impetus that they don't want to go down the road where they're counting on Jauan Jennings, like unless they're paying him. Like you got to make that decision. You want to pay him $5 million, or do you want to give up a 6th round pick? It becomes something like that because you go down this road and you're counting on Jauan Jennings, then you are not sure he's going to actually show up, and 2, or you're gonna have to pay him. And I don't think they want to pay him. Really don't think they want to pay him anything close to what he's asking for. So then what does he do at that point? This is when it gets messy, but it's when it got messy for Ayuk last year. And they capitulated for a lot of different reasons, and they did not like doing it. And they do not want a repeat of that, and they don't want someone else to think, okay, now it's my turn. Then I'm gonna not practice. They don't want that to be set up as a precedent, and they are under the gun now, though. Man, they are under the gun. They just need bodies. They don't even have. I was thinking when you said practice squad, like, oh yeah, they could put some of the guys now on the practice squad. Who would they put on the practice squad? I guess Tariq Owens would be the one that you could see currently on the roster who would go on the practice squad. I think Junior Bergen is making this team, Barrows, especially if Jacob Cowing is hurt. Like Junior Bergen is on this team as the returner. Like there's all these kind of spinning things I wrote about a little bit today. Just like one thing affects three other things because you have these decisions to make at almost every position where, geez, he could be back in week 3, but will he be there in week 4? CJ West, Michael Williams. I don't know when they're, Michael Williams probably be back sooner than that. They don't know. They have it up and down the line. The safeties, they have the Renardo Green just came back, so maybe less so a cornerback, but Trey Brown is an injury issue. Matt Jones, all these things, like if he's healthy, do we keep him on for week 1? But then wait a minute, we need protection over here at this position. A lot of these things are all coming up at once. This is why, again, I'll say they cannot have Jauan Jennings be an if. They cannot have Jauan Jennings be a maybe. It was the same thing for Ayuk last year in a different case, but similar. So at 50, they get into 53. Remember, John Lynch had that incredible press conference. Like, we need him to practice. He's got to practice. He's healthy. The doctors say he's fine. Now, they have not gotten that spot with Jauan Jennings. I think Shanahan has hinted that by saying he got this in camp last year, and remember he was back. Well, it's about time for him to be back. And he said late August, but the season has shifted up a week this year. So it's really behind that right now. All these signs are they cannot be wondering what the Jauan Jennings situation is very much longer. Maybe not much longer than a couple days is how I'm seeing. I don't want to be over dramatic about it, but this is what it's coming down to. Jacob Cowing's injuries, he wasn't going to be counted on, but he was somebody who was going to add depth, and now they don't even have depth. I don't know what they've got. Can they go, Matt Barrows, into week 1? Not sure about Jauan Jennings, or even if you are sure, like Russell Gage is your third receiver. Is this possible they're going to do this?
I think they're going to make moves next week, or before then. I think they have to. To your point, they're not going to let themselves be kind of shoved around by Jauan Jennings. I would say, just to answer your question, that of the remaining guys on the roster right now, Robbie Chosen is absolutely the most explosive of those guys. I think that Russell Gage is, more sort of a trusted veteran. Robbie Chosen, though, is the guy that can loosen up the defense. You saw Jordan Watkins doing that in the spring and summer. He was getting deep. Purdy was hitting him, and Matt Jones was hitting him. He's a guy that has enough speed that he makes defensive backs nervous. And Chosen had a really nice catch today where he kind of showed that ability. He puts pressure on people. Can he be consistent? Can they count on him? Is he going to get hurt? These are all questions that they'd have to ask themselves. But I would say it goes Chosen and then probably Russell Gage in terms of sheer talent of the remaining receivers that we're talking about. Let me ask you a question about Jauan Jennings. If you're Jauan Jennings and you're going into the final year of your contract, you're going to be a free agent in March. Are you compelled to play week 1 because you want to put all your best stuff on film and you want good stats before you reach free agency, or do you continue to kind of shuffle your feet and make sure that you're not overworked and you're still healthy for when you enter free agency?
Yeah, that's a good question because it works both ways, as you noted. I think if you're Jauan Jennings, you're 28 years old. You can't waste games and seasons. You're not going to be 25 when you're a free agent if you play this out and you just play 6 games. I think you want to play as many games as possible. He does have roster bonuses, so he's got to be on the roster to get this money. I don't want to sound like a guy, John Lynch here, but it was a little different for Brandon Ayuk. He did hold in, got his money, but he was 25 years old at the time. I think 26. And had several very strong years. This is different, and I think that's what the 49ers are kind of counting on, and maybe that's cynical for them to do this, but I don't know that he gets this money any other way. I don't think he recoups it. Like you start losing roster checks and game checks. I don't know you're ever getting it back again. He's 28 years old, and it's not like we heard with Debo especially, and with Ayuk last few years that teams are like, oh, we'll trade you. Now that wasn't great offers, but they were interested. That does not happen at all. And I would think Drew Rosenhaus the agent would be really trying to jump up that interest to put pressure on the 49ers. I think, it's a case, and I don't want to get angry, and I don't want to say ridiculous things, but it's not like the 49ers were never going to cut Ayuk, or if they were going to trade him, they wanted a first round pick back. With Jennings, like they might trade him for very little, or just freeze him. They could just put him on IR. Barrows, he goes on IR. He doesn't get any of these checks. He gets the base salary checks, but he doesn't get the roster bonuses. I don't think that's a good moment for Jauan Jennings. And I don't know that the 49ers would sweat it over. Maybe Shanahan would, and the offensive staff would. I don't know that Jed York-Pragmarate and maybe even John Lynch would sweat it much. Like they'd say, you did this to yourself. That's what they would say. I would say you're being self-destructive because you want that player playing and you can afford a couple more $1 million. And if Jauan Jennings is being offered a couple more million and he won't take it, then that's maybe comes down to him. I would want to play. I would want the money, and I would want to be able to go into the next free agency if that's the way it goes, coming off a season. Because, you sit out a bunch of games in a season, you're really not the same after that. So I think it's a tough position for both sides. I've said they both don't have leverage. Neither side has much leverage. Well, this is the moment where both sides are going to exert what they've got. The 49ers leverage is you can just not play for us. And the Jennings leverage is you're going to want me out there. You need me out there. Then we'll see where that meets. But what I know is that one, as Adam Schefter reported, and it's very true that, his agent threatened to make a trade request. Shanahan says it has not happened, but it still could happen. That's a pretty big card to play. And the other side, the 49ers want nothing to do with paying him like a $20 million contract, which is what they've been seeking or more. Nothing to do with that. There's no negotiations on that. That is not happening. Whether there's a backdoor way to do this by adding to his salary of this year or guaranteeing something next year, that I don't know. That would be my compromise. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's happening right now, Barrows. Like this is coming down. The moment feels like it was right now. And I don't think Shanahan's too happy about it. Like he didn't sound happy about it yesterday.
I don't think he is either. Wouldn't it be ironic if the 49ers, the San Francisco 49ers, who are the most bereft of wide receivers at the beginning of the season, trade their best wide receiver? They don't receive one in a trade. They deal away their best wide receiver.
I don't want to say I'm saying that. I get this. Don't aggregate me. I'm just playing it out in my head the way I know.
Yeah,
the 49ers are thinking about that. And if it comes down to it, and if they think he's healthy and he's not going to play, that would not go down well. That would really not go down well. And I don't know what they would get. I don't know what they would seek. I know they would be infuriated by that if those two elements are true, that they think he can play and that he's not playing on purpose for the contract. So let's get out of the aggregation thing here. I'm a little worried I'm gonna get aggregated.
We're in the aggregation zone right now.
We are really in that. It's just my saying.
In the podcast, the aggregation zone.
Well, wasn't my original idea for 49ers podcast was 49ers conspiracy. So that was going to be the title of it. And then we would have done fairly well. But this is going just fine too, Barrows. Okay. Other injury situations. What stands out to you at this moment? What's the injury emergency? What's the injury priority for them?
Well, they did get some defensive linemen back. That was probably the second most injured position coming out of the Raiders game. So Jordan Elliott is back, and Jordan Elliott and Kalia Davis have been quote unquote starting in these practices. So I think that's going to be your lineup in week 1 in Seattle, if they remain healthy throughout the rest of these practices and Saturday's preseason finale. So that's basically what their defensive tackle situation was at the end of last season. And you could say that it's worse because Malik Collins was pretty good at that 3 technique spot. He set a career record for sacks. So, I mean, and you're playing the Seattle Seahawks in week 1, and you didn't stop the run very well last year, especially towards the end of the year when people got hurt. So to me, that's still a big question mark. Can this group of, lesser known defensive tackle, veteran defensive tackles and young guys be better against the run? And I think the answer is probably no, not initially, but maybe as the season goes on, it will be. I think the linebacker situation is better than it was, is far and away better than it was last year. Fred Warner is healthy, for one. That's gigantic. Remember, we were thinking defensive player of the year for him.
Oh, early on, he had like 3 turnovers, like
games,
first time. Yep.
And no Devondre Campbell. You've got D. Winters and Nick Martin as your secondary linebacker. So that position's better. Renardo Green is back at practice this week. He picked up where he left off. He looks very good, very physical. I think that's going to be a strength of this team as long as there's no injuries, because then you start to get into all sorts of depth issues. And then the other big issue right now is guard. You've got Dominic Pooney, who may or may not play in week 1. So it's a question, who's your right guard going to be? And Ben Barch, the left guard, is out with an elbow issue. He looks like he's going to be back soon. So it's kind of interesting that Nick Zakelj has been playing at left guard. That's the Ben Barch spot. And the rookie, Connor Colby, has been playing at right guard, which is the bigger question mark for week 1 right now. So it looks like the 49ers at least really want to see Colby in that situation to see whether he can be the guy, which I think is interesting. 7th round rookie could be starting week 1 in, of all places, Seattle. So it kind of shows you what the 49ers are thinking at guard, how they hold Nick Zakelj at guard. Shanahan mentioned yesterday that, hey, we could even put Spencer Burford at guard. He's played guard before. You guys seen him play guard. Okay, who would be your backup tackle in that scenario? So the whole offensive line, and I think probably every NFL team is pretty light and doesn't have a lot of answers beyond their starting 5. But the 49ers, you're gonna be seeing that issue in this upcoming game.
Yeah, I want to get back to the defensive line because we have not seen Yetur Gross-Matos practice, and I've been throwing out the warning like he's not practicing. I don't know what they can do with him. I don't think they can count on him. And Shanahan was asked about it yesterday. Could he start the season on pup? And he said yes, he could. And I think it's almost an automatic. You just can't not know while you're borrowing the roster spot, and you could use that for somebody else.
Yeah,
that's the math. And, Mykel Williams, you assume he's going to be back, but they don't know for sure. CJ West probably will not be for week 1, but I don't think there's some names here that they don't want to put on injured reserve because that means they can't play the first 4 weeks. And then there's only so many guys you can bring back from injured reserve. There's Pooney, I don't think is even going to be put on injured reserve because maybe he's available for week 2. So you don't want to put him on injured reserve and he misses the first 4. This is becoming like Jordan Watkins. What do you do with him? Do you put him on injury reserve? There's just a finite number of players you can have in this borderline. We're not sure. Let's kind of fake it through, and maybe they're hurt, and maybe they can't miss a game, but maybe we get them back. You can't put 10 guys on that list. So that's where it becomes really problematic, and that's why Corey Kiner gets cut today. It's you can't keep guys who you're not sure about, or you can't keep 5 of them. And Jordan James is, really, you look at Jordan James, they're not sure he's going to be back. You can't have Jordan James and Corey Kiner both on the roster if you're unsure about both of them. Only one. And if Jordan James can't make it back for week 1, then that's a whole other equation they're going to have to make. It's just this jumble of things that they have to decide. And you're right. And then Shanahan mentioned it, they're going to get down to 53, and then they're going to be there's going to be moves throughout the next week and a half. He said up to Saturday, that doesn't mean they're going to be signing people the Saturday of the first game of the season, September 6th before September 7th. It just means practice squad. It means guys are elevated, guys are down, guys are figuring out whether friggin' Christian McCaffrey was friggin' put on injury reserve right before the first kickoff last year. So there's going to be a lot of moves like that. In the middle of the roster is in upheaval with all these injuries. Their top guys are all healthy, mostly, unless Ayuk or whatever. There's a few others, but depth is, I'll say it. How many times I've been saying about depth, Barrows? How many times have I said it since March? It's really important. Healthy guys who can stay healthy are incredibly valuable. And that we'll just throw out some theories on this. I think we both have thrown out our theory, and it's a pertinent question. Why are the 49ers going through this every year, specifically just ravished by injuries the last 2 training camps? What's the reason? Obviously, there's always 20, 50, a million reasons why each injury specifically happens. But the aggregation of this, the accumulation, I shouldn't say aggregation, I hate that word. The accumulation of this, I think it's over optimism. Like, it's not every injury. It's some of the injuries, which makes it seem so bad, is that they are over optimistic. They get guys who have some injury questions. You always have to get some, but they lean towards that for the talent, for the value. And they've gotten rid of players who have stayed healthy. Jordan Mason was a little hurt, but man, that guy's an Iron Man for a running back. Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd. I can name a bunch of guys over the years. DeForest Buckner. I could go back to their commitment to Jason Verrett for 2 years when he was just getting hurt every single year. And I didn't understand it. I get why they do it. And you want some part of it is we just like the guy. The injury history can get through. He will get the value for him when he's healthy. You make that decision 20 straight times, though, you're going to get burned on it 15 times. And I think that is a part of this, not the whole thing. And I'm not saying you should never do it. I'm saying when you kind of fill it out, like Jacob Cowing gets hurt right after he gets hurt. This is what happens to players who get hurt. I don't want to be mean about it. Injuries are injuries. But I think that's my main reason. Not the only reason. That's my main reason. I know, Barrows, you have another one. What do you think is the main reason that this has gone on so long and so poorly for the 49ers?
This will be hard for people who remember old school training camps to reconcile. And so did I. I mean, they used to have 2-a-days in just brutal heat, and it was padded, and there was tackling. And now it's, we had today, it was like an 1 hour and 50-minute practice, and people are like, oh my God, this is the longest practice ever. How do they do it? And there's no tackling and, this, that, and the other. Everything's done to protect the health. I do, however, think that the 49ers are operating at a pace that is higher than just about every other team. And I've talked to, dozens of players over the years, all of whom have been on multiple teams and who have been through different training camps. And all of them have said, this place has the toughest training camp. This place in Pittsburgh was one that I heard quite a bit. Other places don't do pads as much as the 49ers do. Other places just don't. The pace is not what the 49ers do. And I think that pace takes its toll on receivers. We see this year in and year out at that position. And then we all kind of note how boisterous, how tough Chris Kasurik is on the defensive linemen. And I think those guys get some kind of wear and tear issues pretty routinely. And lo and behold, the 2 positions this year that are the most injured are wide receiver and defensive line. So I don't think that's any coincidence. It just happens too regularly for me. Now, the question is, does the benefit of that outweigh the negatives? I mean, the 49ers in 2023 in Pittsburgh, ironically, just crushed them in week 1 and were way better than every other team at the beginning of the season. At the end of the season, however, I still haven't figured this out, and I don't know if we ever will, but remember those 2 playoff games against Green Bay and Detroit? After a bye week, after the 49ers got the number 1 seed and could rest up, they just did not look like themselves. They were running in sand. They were slipping. They did not look like they did at various points during the season. And I can only assume that it's related to what I was just saying, is that this was a team that kind of spent itself at another point in the season. Make the same argument about 2024. This team had nothing in the tank in 2024. Why is that? I just think that, and I've just talked myself into the answer, is that they are pushing too hard, and need to kind of rethink taking care of the players more, because they're petering out.
I'll make 2 points on one. Okay, I don't think Shanahan completely disagrees with you, because I asked him about it, and he didn't say, I don't think we've had enough practices for us to be practicing too hard. But that does leave the option, like, if they had been practicing much the way they wanted to and didn't have all these scrimmages and stops and starts, that maybe they are practicing too hard. For Shanahan to say that was something, because he likes physical, aggressive practices. But 2, this is a team, you talk about bad finishes, that won 10 in a row to end 2022 and would have possibly gone to the Super Bowl that year if Purdy doesn't get hurt in Philadelphia. Then goes to the Super Bowl the next year. And we know their big run with Garoppolo after the 4-5 start in 2021. Like, they have played really well to finish a lot of seasons. The 2 games you mentioned, I understand, I agree, they did look a little slow early. They won both games.
Yeah,
this is a team.
But they were an all-star team.
Yeah, but that plays physically, that believes in it, that if you're tougher and stronger, you run the ball, right? Shanahan's thing, run 40 times. Let's run 40 times. We're going to win. I think you have to instill that in some respect in camp. And I don't, like, my God, the Eagles training camps, freaking buddy. I don't want to sound like an old guy, but my God, they were just killing each other, just absolutely killing each other. The 9-on-7 drills, that's the short yardage running drills that teams do not do anymore, was unbelievable. Reggie White, Jerome Brown, Michael, it was unbelievable. So for me to say this is too much, it's hard for me to say that. I think Shanahan would have the same reaction, but maybe they're going to scale it back some. The soft tissue stuff is problematic. There's no question. But I'm not saying it has nothing to do with it. It might have something to do with it. I suspect it's more the valuing of players who get through seasons. They say they value that. Then it comes to free agency, and they don't seem to value it as much. Javon Kinlaw was a semi-red flag in the draft because he had a knee issue in college. I knew it. They surely knew it, and they still took him with that pick. And to replace DeForest Buckner, who was one of the healthiest defensive linemen you'll ever see in football. Nothing is the answer, right? There's no one answer. It's not get rid of this training staff because they're the worst. It's not. Maybe some are better than others, but that's not what it is. It's not they don't stretch enough. That's not the only answer. It's not the practice field is bad. I think the practice field is fantastic. There's so many different things that could be it, and it's not just one thing. I think we raised 2 topics that are probably of the 2 main topics that they're thinking about, but you don't want to just start not practicing hard and then be soft, right? You don't want to do that. You want to be a tough team. You want to feel like you're physically ready to absorb. What is it? Shannon calls it be calloused. You got to get that calloused up. You got to get ready to get hit. You don't want to be shocked when you step on the field, and you want to be strong enough that you can keep this going into November, December. There's a lot of different issues with this, but they're going to be looking at it. There's no question. And for Shanahan to say, we haven't even practiced enough for me to say we're practicing too hard. That's him not saying, oh, we're going to practice this way forever. That is absolutely not that. It is him saying, well, we're going to have to look at this. So your point is well made. I think my point's okay. We'll see how this goes. But, man, it is hard to survive when they do this. There's no question. The season becomes very difficult. The roster decisions become like, what if they lose Corey Kiner? There could be a lot more than that too, right? This is still 6 days before the cut-down day. They might have other things that they have to do. This is how you lose good players. These are the decisions you have to make. this has just been the 49ers reality. This is it. And fans are getting used to it, I think, and we'll continue to talk about it. But I think it's understood throughout the organization that there's something weird going on here. And maybe they have to start approaching things. I think they have approached things differently over the few years. They've changed their strength and conditioning staff. You can't keep doing that because clearly that's not the only reason if you're changing it and the results are the same. So, all right, Barrows, you and I remain healthy as can be, though. Woo! That's
I think they should bring back Mike Singletary's hill that he put up there. That'll fix it.
They had that hill, and then they bought it, right? They brought in another hill. Who did that one?
The ramp. That was Ray Wright, the strength coach at the time.
Yep. Which was almost never used and just frankly looked dangerous, if you ask me, because you have to go up that huge inclined thing, and then how do you get down? Like, it always looked a little shaky to me. And
now they have all the kind of wood hobby horses, the wood obstacle course. At one
the
part.
Seal, right? The Seal stuff, right? Isn't it?
The Seal stuff. I've never seen anyone using that ever.
Nope. Maybe John Lynch when he.
That's who did it.
Yes.
Lynch swears by it, but I just don't ever see the players using it.
Yeah. All right, Barrows, lots to talk about. My God, we might have to do another show this week. It's so much going on. Probably won't until after Saturday's game against the Chargers close preseason. We haven't even talked about Harbaugh and Trey Lance. Oh my God, I thought that's what we were going to talk about in this show. We're not even mentioning. I will mention them now. It will be fascinating to watch that. We're going to get a ton of Trey Lance. I might try to stop in to see my guy Harbs. It is unbelievable that the 49ers have so much other stuff going on that we barely even mentioned the Chargers. You didn't even mention the Chargers. It had to be me to bring up the Chargers at the end. And we shall end the episode without even having a discussion about that. Wow. So much going on. All right. That's it. That's the show for today. See ya, everybody.